Hello, everybody. Welcome to the President's Live Briefing for today. We have about 214 people who registered to join us this afternoon, which we're thrilled about. With that, I'd like to also just remind you that the Q&A function is available for you to post questions to the President and the rest of our cabinet members. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Lehman.
Thank you, Joshunda. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this President's Live Briefing. Today, joining us are Provost Nwosu, Vice President for Administration and Finance, Rene Rotolo, Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer, Ron Bergman. And we may have Vice President Sarmiento joining us. I'm not sure if she's joined yet. And also Executive in charge of Student Affairs, Stanley Bazile. I asked more of the senior leadership team to join us today so that we could cover a wide range of topics that there may be questions about that you have. So if you do put them in the chat function and we will try to get to those questions. As you know, we've been holding these briefings in order to give you real-time information about the major issues facing the college. The main ones have been our budget situation and the plans for the fall term, returning to campus as it begins in the fall term. There's no news on the budget today, so I don't have any updates, and I don't think Vice President Rotolo will either on that. I'm not really expecting probably that we will have an update for a week or two, but we're always surprised. Every week is a new week. We will spend a fair amount of time on initially on the return to campus and also some other elements that could impact the campus that we want to discuss. First, some good news. Earlier in the spring, we shared with Excellencia in Education, which is an organization that we're a part of, some of the ways that Lehman College has been helping support and prepare Latinx students for success in college and in the workforce and in careers afterwards. Some of those have been included now in a new report that actually just came out today. It's called Tapping Latino Talent, How HSIs Are Preparing Latino Students for the Workforce. This is just released today, as I said, and it's been covered in an article in Inside Higher Education. I want to thank Dr. Bazile and also the director of our Career Exploration and Development Center, Bazile Toussaint, who helped compile the information that's gone into that report that features 4 colleges, Lehman College being one of them. It's about internships and career readiness and preparation. Things that have been going on in Lehman and at Lehman in the past few years and new things that are developing. I'm also happy to share the great news that City Council member Andrew Cohen, whose district we're in, has secured capital funding request for us in the City Council budget of $1.4 million. That will help us construct the new Teaching and Learning Commons, which we've received funding, partial funding for in a previous year. And it will, that's going to serve as a center for innovation and research and pedagogy, which will serve staff, faculty, and students. And we've also received funding to help with completing the School of Social Work space, something that's been in the works also for some time. Lehman College is, as far as I know, the only senior CUNY college to receive City Council capital funding for this new fiscal year. It's a year of a very tight and actually reduced New York City budget. And so this is really good news. And this morning I had a chance to thank Councilman Cohen personally for his relentless efforts on behalf of Lehman College. Last year we received $3 million in capital funding with great help from him and his office. So we're really grateful to him and for his staff for doing so much for Lehman College over the years to receive this funding, which allows us to do projects which otherwise we really would not be able to do. One of the questions on the fall term that we've had pretty consistently in these sessions is about what will the term look like, what will instruction look like. There are developments that will likely be finalized today in a special CUNY Board of Trustees meeting. Provost Nwosu is going to talk about plans that we have underway and give some more details at the college. But in advance of the board meeting, we have the resolution that is before the board, and I'll read just a few parts of that resolution so you get a sense of what the CUNY Central Administration, the Chancellor, is asking the board to endorse for the fall term. Resolved that the Board of Trustees endorses the university's decision to extend offering of its academic courses and programs for as many of its academic courses and support services as is reasonably practicable in an online modality and remote format for the fall semester 2020, with exceptions being made for courses that cannot be effectively delivered at distance, such as those courses which are highly experiential or services that require clinical placements, and where there's services for students where there's a tangible exchange, such as food pantries, that is required for them to function. So that's the first part of the resolution, but there's a second part which I think we haven't really talked about very much, but I think it's very important to know about. So the second resolve is that, subject to the prevailing conditions and circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, the university's decision for the extension of the online distance learning modality and remote services for the majority of the university's academic courses, programs, and support services for the fall semester 2020 shall be conditionally extended to the spring semester 2021 as reasonably necessary. So I haven't read everything that's in those resolutions. I took out the key points, but you get I think, get pretty much the intent of that, which is to formally state that we intend to offer the maximum number of courses that we can online for the fall, with the likelihood that that would be extended to the spring, depending on the circumstances. So these statements really are fully consistent with what we've already been planning for at Lehman College, and the provost again will extend his comments about that. Last week, you remember, if you were in the session, that he pointed out that or even more of our fall courses we can be fully online in the fall. So he will add to that. But I wanted you to know, because this has been a point of concern and uncertainty that everyone, faculty, staff, and students have been living with for some time. So we don't know if the resolution will be passed in exactly this form. Of course, we don't know for sure that it will be passed. I'm sure that there will be discussion at the board meeting about it and different aspects of it. But that is what is being put before the board, and as soon as we know the result, we will get the word out to the campus. We have never underestimated the challenges that the going to distance education has presented. We did it very rapidly in the middle of the spring term, which is a huge challenge, but it's also a challenge to retool these courses even now as they're being offered in the summer and for the fall. Our goal has been to keep students and staff and the faculty safe and to make the learning environment as successful as possible. While we didn't have a choice in the spring about how we did that, really, we just had to do it so suddenly. We have had the benefit of time for the summer and for the fall to make preparations, and the provost and his team have prepared a very good detail about how we do that. And so we try to keep right in the forefront all the time the importance of maintaining quality and making sure that what we're offering to students is going to be courses that will serve them and that will allow them to make academic progress. Of course, it isn't just courses that have needed conversion to online delivery, and we've had all of services that we offer also had to make that transition. And, you know, without those services, students wouldn't be able to register for courses, receive financial aid, receive support ranging from advising to emergency grants and mental health services. So when I've completed my update and we get to the panel, there may be more comments about those areas as well. Wanted to briefly also update you on the progress on the President's Task Force on Campus Climate and Inclusion. The task force is now formed with 12 members, and its first meeting will be next week. I will send an email to the campus with the details, including the membership, the timeline for the task force and its work, and the scope of its charge. I'll be doing that next week so that you'll be able to see the details. I'm very pleased that this important task force now will begin its work on this critically important subject for all of us. Now I'm going to turn to a topic that has come up in the last week, which is the US DOS modifications to the rules governing student exchange and visitor programs. And first I wanted to note that Harvard and MIT have together sued the US government over these new regulations, and that suit's being joined by key organizations of which we are a part, including the American Council on Education. And there will be other legal actions, I'm pretty sure, from states that will include requests for an injunction against the implementation of these rules. Our position on this is very much the position taken by CUNY Chancellor Rodriguez when he issued his statement earlier in the week, condemning the federal rule change that was announced that could impact close to 100 international students at Lehman College and thousands more throughout the CUNY system. Modifications to those rules governing the student exchange and visitor program would require students who are in the US on an F1 visa to take at least one in-person course, which is an outrageous shift in the policy given the likelihood of most of our education, as I've just mentioned, occurring online for the foreseeable future. Lehman College unequivocally supports every individual in our community, regardless of their immigration status or country of origin, and we will continue to do that. We will work closely with the Chancellor and with his administration, and we will pursue any measures that we can to help international students, a vital part and a vibrant part of our community, and we want them to be able to continue their educations online, just as all the other students are, in order to stay safe. But we also want them to be able to remain in this country as they do that. Our first line of defense is the legal challenge to these new rules that is being launched. If that fails, we are going to consider other options, and I believe Provost Nwosu may also have other comments to make in that regard when he gives us his statements. And so I'd like to, with that, I would like to turn to Provost Nwosu to share his comments with us.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone, and my colleagues. Let me just speak very quickly to the 2 points that the President has mentioned this afternoon with regard to a reopening plan for fall 2020. First, at last week's briefing, as you recall, and the President mentioned this, I did provide information on our reopening plan that includes a combination of largely online classes and very minimal in-person sections. And I did speak about the formula that we would be using as a guide, our 90/10 formula, with 90% of our courses online, and the President has advanced that approach we have been speaking about for several weeks, and certainly roughly 10% as in-person. And that's consistent with the resolution before the board, and is also consistent with the discussions that have been taking place with the task force that the Chancellor established to look at academic continuity and support services. There's still a lot of work required, and part of that work we began for the past several weeks. Yesterday, I gave approval for all classes designated as online by the deans to be updated in CUNY first. And that's important that we continue to make those arrangements. The registrar's office has also begun that update in our system. And due to the amount of changes this will require in CUNY First, which is a manual process, I'm requesting the campus community to kindly allow the office some time to update the system. As I discussed at the president's briefing last week, the plans for the roughly 10% in-person sections from our schools and for our LEH courses managed through the Office of Academic Programs and Educational Effectiveness and our Enrollment Management Division were all due today. And as of this afternoon, I understand from the registrar's office that all of our schools have submitted their reopening plans. And that plan also, the submitted plans also include a plan from the library. And so we have a complete set of plans to look at for the courses. Those plans for the 10%, that's actually what has been submitted. Those plans for the 10% will be entered into CUNY First. Eventually, once we have approval from the task force that I will speak about, that will be looking at all of these plans with regard to in-person instruction and support services for fall 2020. I've also asked the senior registrar to create a single worksheet for all of the reopening plans that we have received to date, to incorporate course sections that deans and department chairs as well as unit heads have indicated could possibly come to campus for in-person instruction and in-person support services. This particular spreadsheet should give us, begin to give us a full picture of in-person sections and services that will be needed for fall 2020 reopening. We've actually been doing this in a much deliberate manner, very carefully thought out, and I want to thank our campus community for the work they have done in this regard. I have a meeting this afternoon following the president's live briefing to review the submitted plans with the senior registrar. Once we have reviewed those plans, I do plan to establish the task force that I just mentioned for what we refer to as phase 2. And that task force will comprise of a broad section of the campus community, and we will be reaching out to those members of the community that would help to review the submitted plans in detail to ensure that those plans are complete. And indeed, to be sure that the plans also meet the health and safety requirements of the state of New York, as well as the guidelines from CUNY for in-person instruction. As the president mentioned, safety is our #1 priority. And so the work of this particular task force will include ensuring that we have contingency provisions. That's certainly what I have asked our deans and unit heads to ensure that each plan that is submitted for any particular support service or course to be offered in person has to have a contingency arrangement in the event of a resurgence of the virus. And so they have done those, and those will be the kinds of things the task force will be looking at. Once the campus reopening plan for in-person instruction and support services is finalized by the task force and approved by CUNY, certainly this also has to go to CUNY, we will share this plan with the campus community, and that includes all faculty, all of our staff, and all of our students. I know folks have been asking questions, but we're trying to make sure that we do this carefully and thoroughly. The president has talked about international students, and this is actually tied also to our reopening plan. And this has to do with the directive from the administration. We have about 100 international students on our campus, and I want to reassure them, as the president has done, that we are doing everything in our power to ensure a smooth registration for all of them for fall, and that they remain in their classes without any violation of their visa status. As some of you may know, to maintain their status, undergraduate international students must enroll in a minimum of 12 credit hours each semester. And for graduate international students, a minimum of 9 credit hours. International students cannot have an entirely online schedule. However, because of the pandemic we all experienced in colleges, we're granted exemptions to offer instruction to all of our students through online modality. This exemption was extended recently for fall 2020 by the US Department of Education. It is this exemption that the government has modified, and that's what the president has talked about. And so what we are essentially going to be doing is to, as the president mentioned, to review the implications of what that means for our students. The government is also saying that any international student who does not enroll in in-person instruction will be in violation of their status and therefore subject to deportation. As you probably know, the president mentioned 2 institutions and others that have been working, they've actually filed sued the administration requesting injunctions to block the regulation. Yesterday, I met with Dr. Teresita Levy, Director of International Programs and Community Engagement, to discuss the progress her office and the Division of Enrollment Management have been making consistent with our reopening plan that I've just shared to ensure that our international students are okay with their fall registration. Our plan is to use a combination of online, hybrid, and in-person approaches that are sure that all international students are taking the minimum number of courses required to make normal progress in their degree programs and avoid any jeopardy to their visa status. Of course, the government has indicated that July 15th is the required due date for institutions to submit their campus plans for return to in-person instruction. And if that doesn't happen, then they will move forward. We have sought guidance, and as the president mentioned, we will do everything within our power to ensure that our international students are not jeopardized in terms of their ability to continue with their studies at the institution. I do want to take a moment to thank our deans, our department chairs, our faculty, our staff, for your thoughtfulness and diligence in developing the modality for both online and in-person instruction, not only for fall 2020. Expanding on the work that was done very aggressively over spring semester and over summer as well, and doing so efficiently within a climate of rapid turnaround, and sometimes, and I say this, sometimes with confusing information and requests. And there's been times the information has been confusing, and this has been the story of our lives. As I say, since March, as part of, we are part of a public college within a large and complex public ecosystem that involves one of the largest systems of public higher education in the country. We're also part of the city, and we're also part of the state. And that, of course, explains why the information can be sometimes rapid, sometimes confusing. But on all fronts, we have managed to respond immediately when we have been asked, and we have delivered promptly in the service of our mission. We have remained focused on transforming the lives of students who come to us and igniting new possibilities in those students, even with the challenges that we have faced. And I really, on behalf of the president, want to say thank you very much. Thank you so much for the work everyone on this campus and at the institution, and certainly our central office, has been involved in ensuring the success that we have seen thus far. And finally, to our new and continuing students, thank you for your resilience and for your patience, even in the face of many odds and the mountains to climb to earn your education during these trying times. And I especially want to thank our students for choosing Lehman College. Mr. President, that concludes my brief update.
Thank you, Provost. Before we move to the questions, I wanted to ask Vice President Bergmann to say a few things, because I think he's got a couple of things that would be good for everybody to know about by way of updates.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I also want to thank you and the Provost for your leadership. It's very meaningful, your support of and advocacy for students, faculty, and staff has been remarkable during this period of time. So I just want to, if I can, start with the update on the loaner devices. We have in the spring provided more than 800 loaner devices, mostly Chromebooks, to students to assist them in completing their spring semester studies. And more recently, in the last month, about 70 devices have been loaned to students who are newly enrolled, students in the summer and continuing into the fall, but that number is expected to grow. And we're expecting to get more devices from CUNY shortly, so that every student should be able to have a loaner device if they need it. And I want to thank also the work of Rene Rotolo and her team, Stanley Bazile and his team, and a few people on my team, especially Raymond Diaz, for their incredible work, because the support that all of these teams and many more have shown to provide these devices for students has been exemplary. I just want to mention two things with regard to students that you need to be aware of. The first is that we have seen a significant increase in phishing emails, fraudulent emails that have come offering work-at-home jobs. And these are very rarely the case. They seem to come from a reliable source, but they're really scams. So please do not respond to these and never provide confidential email, confidential information in response to an email. You can contact the help desk. If you want to authenticate an email, make sure it's real, you can forward it to them and we could work to make sure that an email is legitimate. But we've seen more of these scams coming, and we want all of our students to be mindful of that and not to be victims of fraud. And next, just in terms of faculty and staff, we are in the process of testing the migration this week and next of email to Microsoft Office 365. As you probably know, many of you who've used Teams, and especially, it's a terrific tool for collaboration. It'll increase our digital capabilities, and we hope to start migrating faculty and staff to this new email platform over the summer, so please stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's turn to some of the questions that have come in. We'll kind of go in reverse order here, just because the most recent questions are really related to what we've just been discussing about the fall term and the various aspects of that. So there are two really that are addressing sort of the same issue. One is how many classes in person and how many online, and where was the decision, the provost talked about 90% or more online. Was this a Lehman decision or a CUNY-wide decision? And I will comment first, and then I'm going to ask Provost, I'm going to ask you also to comment on this. So the part I'll address is about the decision making. You know, because we've had uncertainty for a long time, since really even in the end of the spring term, we were thinking, of course, about the summer and about the fall, and knowing that we could not wait until the middle of the summer to suddenly think, oh, maybe we should consider what we might do in the fall. So of course, we've been thinking about this locally at Lehman College for some time, while discussions have been going on across the whole university. Our decision, and I believe this is totally consistent with the university, has always been around creating the safest possible environment. And we know that in the middle of this pandemic, with no vaccine yet available, and despite the reports you may have seen today about, in some areas, including the Bronx, very high levels apparently of exposure to the virus, we're nowhere near anything like herd immunity. So we've known all along that going through the summer and into the fall, and undoubtedly into the spring, that we're still in the middle of a very volatile and dangerous situation where the virus is everywhere and can erupt at any time. So our number one goal has been safety for our staff, for our faculty, for our students. And that has really led us locally to make the choice to work very hard to be prepared as much as we possibly can for online courses. So that is a local decision, but it is also one that has remained very consistent with what the chancellor has said. I'm in meetings weekly with the chancellor, if not more frequently, speak to him. And I know that what we have been planning to do locally is very consistent with the goal of the university as a whole. So Provost, you want to add to that? I'm sure you have some other dimensions to add to answering those questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me just add to that. As I have mentioned in prior discussions that I have had on this briefing, and certainly with our Provost and Dean's Council, the 90 by 10 formula came in as a guide, but it was informed by an analysis that CUNY had done for all of the courses offered in fall of 2019. And the idea was really to get a sense of if we have to move gradually to in-person instruction, what courses offered in fall within this academic year, fall 19 is part of this academic year, could we extrapolate in a way that allows us to begin planning for fall in the event that we have to move in this direction. And that discussion actually began in spring as we're looking at the data. That discussion took place in the Academic Council, that's the Council of Chief Academic Officers. And then it was also furthered in the task force. As everyone knows, the Chancellor established a task force on academic continuity and student support. I'm on that task force that also reviewed that data. And it made sense then for us to use that as a guide in our planning. And it could actually, the in-person could go up or it could go lower. And the idea was that 90% of all of the courses offered during fall could easily be offered online if we were to continue with our planning for fall 2020. And that'd be anywhere between 10% to 14% could be offered in person based on the lessons that we were also learning from spring semester. So it was a combination of those factors. And each of the CUNY schools happen to be at different points in terms of that 10%. And what do those 10% consist of? They actually consist of the things you mentioned, Mr. President, in terms of the Board of Trustees resolution coming up this afternoon. Labs is one example, clinical courses are other examples. So those kinds of classes, and we deferred to department chairs and school deans to make the determinations about what those courses could be for in-person instruction, working with their faculty, and then include that in the plans that came up from the schools which were due today. Those are the plans that the senior registrar is putting together. But we did also provide a caveat. Be sure that in the event you are recommending that this class move to in-person, that there is a contingency plan that we have to return to in the event that there's a resurgence. So this has been really carefully been thought through. Now it's up to the next level of this, which is the phase 2. Now we have the data for the task force that I mentioned to now review all of those submissions and then make determinations. They'll also have questions to ask, guided by New York State requirements about safety issues. Have they addressed all of the questions that needed to be addressed? And once that task force says yes, we can now move forward with submission to CUNY. And once we get approval from CUNY, we then move forward with announcing to our campus community and implementation for fall 2020.
Thank you. And there have been some follow-up questions in this area. One of the questions refers to what's happening. We're watching unfold in real time now, the city school system, K through 12. What may be happening there in the fall? The mayor's indicating 2 to 3 days in class and a couple of days out of class as a model they're working on. So the question is, can we create a similar kind of system at the college? And there are similarities that we have with the K through 12 education system, but we have a lot of differences. And one of the differences even exists within that K through 12 population. If we look at, for instance, the rate of infection and what seems to be the risk of transmission of a virus by infected individuals, that seems to increase with age, even within children. So young children up to in elementary school, right now, the data is looking like they are much less likely, even if they have been exposed and are infected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, they're much less likely to be spreaders of that virus. But as they get older into middle school and high school, that increases. What we know for certain is that students of the age that are in college, that are at Lehman College, are in the group of students where the risk of transmission is moderate to very high, depending on the individual. And there are so many things that we cannot know about any individual who comes on campus. We will have screening for every individual that does come on campus, whether it's faculty, staff, or students in some of those classes that will come in person to a class. Screening isn't perfect. Screening will not prevent infectious individuals from coming to campus. We know that because it may not have symptoms. 40 to 50% of infected individuals do not have symptoms, and some of those folks are infectious. So we will be relying on, again, our first line of defense, which is to minimize the number of people on campus to the greatest degree that we can, because that is the best protection we've got. Failing that, we do screening and we use on-campus measures like wearing masks, having the kind of spacing and particularly the air handling that reduces the possibility of infection when there is an infectious individual on campus. But again, the principle that really applies here with regard to classes and whether we could do some in-person classes is we want to have the least number that we possibly can, because of that's our best way to reduce the risk to the health of our students. And then, which ones of those classes, there have been questions about which ones they will be. I think the provost has pretty well kind of defined the classes, the types of classes that will be considered for that. And I don't know if Vice President Rotolo, if you want to make any comments that are related to what has to happen in classrooms that would have students, but I think it might be good if you could comment on that.
Sure. So some of the ones that we've been looking at already in helping departments develop their plans to submit to the provost have been labs, which traditionally seat 24 students and 1 faculty member. In looking at safe distancing in those spaces, we'll go from 24 down to 6 students at a time. So that's pretty typical. I would say a third is what we've been seeing. In some cases, in larger spaces, it can be close to 50%, but not quite. But in spaces like labs, which are most likely to take place on campus, it'll be a third.
Great, thank you. One of the questions, Vice President Bergman, that's a follow-up on your comments, is what about when we talk about loaners for students? We've had mainly Chromebooks and iPads, but there are students that either are in programs of study where those laptops aren't necessarily sufficient to do the work that they need to do, or may not meet the specifications for doing examinations. Do you have comments about that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. It's a good one. While the Chromebooks, which are essentially Android laptops that are internet connected, enable many things to happen for most students, getting onto Blackboard, getting into Microsoft Office online to do research and look at periodicals and things of that nature. While they've been very useful, we're working with CUNY Central on purchasing higher powered laptops for students in certain courses. So things like computer science courses or graphic arts courses where these devices aren't really powerful enough. In addition, so that hopefully will come online in the fall, and CUNY Central is looking to do an aggregate buy so that colleges can have a higher number of these devices for specialized purposes. The other thing I'll add is that some students also have experienced Wi-Fi limitations, which makes it difficult to complete their work. And we do have a small number of MiFi devices that are little devices that help people connect to the internet. And so if you are interested in that as a student, if there's a specific need, you can apply through Dean Bazile's office through Student Affairs. And I also want to note that this week, the mayor's office funded a new initiative to expand low-cost wireless access to communities of need throughout the city where internet, which would be low-cost internet, will be provided. Now, this will take some time and it'll complement some efforts that you, President, and others are leading in terms of Bronx-based initiatives. But I think it's good to know that we're on the cusp of creating in New York more universal broadband, and that will, as it comes to fruition, will help to reduce the digital divide. But we do still have students that have need for higher end computers. We're working towards that, and also for those students that need greater access to Wi-Fi.
Great, thank you. Dean Bazile, have you joined us?
I'm here, Mr. President.
Excellent. So there are a couple of questions here that I think I'd like to direct to you. One of them is, this is a really great question. It has to do with what can we do to help enhance student engagement during this period when we really are mostly all working and studying remotely. So for student groups, for activities for students, what kinds of things are we doing, can we do to maintain a good engagement for students?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I think it's an excellent question. And so the team in Campus Life, we've been working on that because we understand that in order for a student to develop holistically, we want to make sure that they're successful in and outside the classroom. But there's obviously been some challenges. We also recognize that having SGA and having the Campus Life clubs were things that help de-stress students. And during this time, more than ever, students are very stressed. So one of the things that we're doing in Campus Life is every Tuesday we have office hours where students get to check in. They can pose questions to the Campus Life team. SGA is working very closely with the Campus Life team to provide different activities. So in the spring semester, for example, we had virtual happy hours. We even had a virtual party, which the president was able to attend. Students were very happy about that. So we want to continue that. But we also recognize that in this time where there's, where we're dealing with issues of race and issues of equity and inclusion, students want an outlet to have a conversation. This would be typically things that we would do on campus. So we haven't abandoned that, and we recognize that's important. So there have been a series of workshops that have been done online with Campus Life, as well as with the Counseling Center to talk about the death of Breonna Taylor, to talk about George Floyd. So these things will continue to go on. We're trying to see what services that we provided in person that we could do virtual. And so we realized that IG and some of the other formats have been really great. And we've also gotten feedback from students who said in the past they really wanted to attend programs, but because of the time and place they couldn't. But because they're now virtual, we're still able to meet with them. But we recognize that it's not perfect, but we're looking for suggestions. We meet with SGA every Friday to get their feedback. And again, I strongly encourage students to stop in every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. We can send a link to the students so that they can communicate with the office. And if there's any needs or any particular programs they would like to see, we'll do our best to try to make them happen. Great,
thank you. Let me keep you here for the next question. Also really good one. I'm sure this question could probably be generalized to a lot of students in their situation, but this is someone who's a veteran utilizing the post 9/11 GI Bill. Will the decision to attend Lehman online affect the financial award that's provided through that program? Since attending in person could be an option, the question's worded, there will be, let me just reiterate that for most classes, it will not be an option. In person will not be an option. But for those, if there were in-person options, what would be the potential impact on financial aid?
So we're working, Luis Rotolo Rodriguez, who is the director of that office, is working very closely with financial aid, but also working with the folks with the military services to identify. We have been working, and so there might be some impacts, but it's a moving target. But it is something that we've been working really closely with Vera in financial aid, with the folks in enrollment management. We're still trying to make sure that students are not impacted financially. So this has been a question that has been asked around all campuses because this is affecting a lot of students. So many students are able to go to college because of the GI Bill. And so we've been working and receiving guidance in terms of how to support students.
Great, thank you. One of the questions that has almost come up every time we've had a briefing has to do with cost and tuition given a largely online program, and how that's affected cost, and how tuition might be impacted by the change in the delivery of all the courses. And it's, this has been a national discussion as well. And one of the things that I don't think this really needs to take up a lot of our airtime today, but just to remind everyone that 91% of our entire budget is people, is personnel. And all of those people are going to be participating in delivering our academic program and all the services that we provide as a college, whether we're online or not. So 91% of that really doesn't change in terms of the budget of the college. The other 9%, if you think about the fact that we still have a physical facility that we have to heat or air condition, we can't simply let the buildings go. We have to provide campus security, and there are many other kinds of costs that are in that non-personnel category that we also really have no ability to reduce, and really are not significantly reduced. They're reduced somewhat, but not very much, by having everybody online. So when you then add in the third element to that equation, which is what are the additional costs that we encounter when we offer courses online, the costs of training and development, the technology costs that we know are not going to be fully covered by the CARES Act funding. We're not going to realize savings. What we're hoping is that we won't have a cost increase that's too great to handle due to the fact that we're online, but we're really not going to see any kind of cost savings just because we're delivering our courses online. Let me just cruise back up through the questions here. And I want to thank everybody for your questions. These have been really good, important questions to address. One of the questions has to do with faculty access to offices And I would like Vice President Rotolo, if you would respond to that question specifically about faculty, but also maybe you can say a few words about current access to the campus and how that might be changing as the city enters into phase 4 of the reopening.
But let's start with what's current. We have a process in place for faculty to be able to get to their office to retrieve anything they may need for either their classes that are being taught remotely, or if they have personal items they want to retrieve. So you need to notify your chair, preferably by the Thursday of the week prior to your coming on campus, of your day and time that you would like to come on campus. They will submit that list to the dean. The dean then submits a list to us, and we submit that to public safety, and that allows people access onto campus on the date and at the time that you have scheduled to be on campus. Public safety will then escort you to the building, to open the building for you, to allow you to go in and to go to your office. As far as we get closer, or once we're at a point where phase 4 allows the reopening of campus, we first have to have a plan in place and approved by CUNY prior to be able to let anyone come on campus. But what we will be able to do, and what we'll be starting next week, and we've really been doing a lot of it all along, is preparing the campus to reoccupy it. And there's a lot that goes into that. You know, we've had buildings that haven't been occupied for the most part. People have been in and out, but they've really not been occupied in use. So we have to make sure all the systems are working functionally. We've been changing the filters in the air handling units. We've been disinfecting the units. We have been disinfecting the entire campus from top to bottom, inside and out, all the buildings. Of course, we've been maintaining the grounds on the campus all along, so campus looks beautiful and looks ready for everybody, but we're in the process of getting all the buildings ready. So we feel very comfortable that by the time we're ready to start repopulating, all of the buildings will be in tip-top shape and ready to receive people. That being said, we don't have a plan yet of exactly who's coming back. There is a survey that's gone out, and if you have not responded to it, please, or if you haven't received it, first of all, let your dean or your VP in your division or school know to send it to you. Please get it back to us as quickly as possible. We're looking to assess what areas of non-essential workers cannot be done remotely successfully. Those will be our first priority to get back on campus. And again, it'll be on a staggered schedule without everyone being there together. It will be on a scheduled basis. The supervisor will set the schedule for people. And we would see either visitors or students on campus, again, scheduled. Everything will have to be scheduled so we know who's on campus, where they are, and how long they'll be there. And that's where the planning is right now. Again, we have to wait for CUNY's plan. We have to wait for CUNY to approve our plan, which our plan is pretty well developed at this point. And then we need to get the okay to move ahead in phase 4.
Great, thank you. One of the questions, it reminded me of something that that's good to mention, and Vice President Bergman, you may want to add in here, but it's a question about tools available for faculty members in delivering their courses. In addition to Blackboard Collaborate, we've had lots of use of Zoom and other tools, and one thing I can say is that the CUNY Central Administration and IT Central has been working on a number of CUNY-wide licenses for things like Zoom, Camtasia, and other programs that to make sure that we have a robust set of tools that are available as we head towards the fall. Vice President Bergman, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Well, Zoom is a very well regarded tool. People find it easy to use, and there's been high rates of adoption among our faculty. So, there's a tool embedded, of course, within Blackboard, Blackboard Collaborate, but all of these tools, Zoom, and even Microsoft Office Teams, which is widely used by Lehman, all of these tools are used for collaboration, for video type events, as is Zoom, and they all, Zoom and Teams, can be embedded through what's called an LTI into Blackboard. So in addition to the procurement that you referred to that CUNY Central is doing, and they've had the benefit of time, they've taken surveys, and they've used that input to wisely make some good procurement decisions, because when CUNY procures for the whole university, they lower costs dramatically. So Zoom should be available much more widely in the fall for faculty, staff, and students. It can be embedded into Blackboard, and Teams is already available for us, can be used now, but will also be embedded in Blackboard.
Great, thank you. Vice President Sarmiento, are you with us? Apparently not.
I am.
Oh, you are. Great. Excellent. So we've got a few minutes left, but I wonder if you would say a few things just about enrollment, where we are this summer, what we're looking like for the fall. I know that's really dynamic, but I think everybody would like to know a little bit. Can you give us a report?
Sure. Okay, for summer, and I believe the last session starts in mid-July, we're doing fairly well. We're up 13% from last year, 14% in undergrad and 8% in grad. So that's a very healthy increase in summer enrollment. For fall, we did set our targets to be flat from last year, which is about 15.5. And right now we are 3% above where we were last year. We're trending pretty even, about 1% for undergrad, but 14% ahead in graduate enrollment. And that really speaks to the graduate campaign that we launched earlier this year. And so I want to thank the admissions office, Valerie and Lori, in terms of processing all those applications, as well as the program directors. We got an email from Dr. Demmer regarding his program, and he said that he was going to have a record enrollment for his MA in Health Education and Promotion. So we're really happy to partner with him and all the program directors. In terms of new students, there's some good news there. In terms of our first year regular students, we're 43% above where we were last year. It looks like we will have a banner freshman enrollment. We're trending pretty equal with transfers, and again, graduate enrollment is up. I think one of the things that I really want to outline here is that our continuing student enrollment, we're 7% above where we were last year, and we're trending very nicely. So shout out to Lisa Moalem, her area, and all the faculty advisors during CDADs. Talk about a very busy time. So enrollment is up, and that we're cautiously optimistic about our enrollment targets. And I can't help but mention that the grad enrollment, continuing and new, and Takia in grad studies, and all the program directors, that initiative for a small amount of money has really paid off.
Excellent. That's a great report. Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to comment while you've got the mic on the discussion that we've had? You have an angle in on some of these questions too.
Well, I think I'm seeing some of the questions, and I just want to be able to briefly say that in terms of The ACE benefits and SEEK benefits, they'll still be getting them. I think for the ACE students, we're going to have a delay in Metro cards, but they're going to get them. Books have been online. So things are not in person, but they're remote, but we're keeping everything status quo. And I really want to thank the chairs and the deans in working through this very last bit effort here to be able to hopefully meet or even slightly exceed enrollment targets.
Excellent, great.
Thank you.
So I can see that we've run out of time, and I'm happy that we had a great bunch of questions, and I want to thank all of you who've joined me on the panel to answer them. We're going to get more opportunities to do this, and so we will continue these conversations. Thanks to everyone who's joined this afternoon. And I want to really double back and reiterate and second what the provost said about also thanking all the faculty and staff for the efforts that have been made, and because they've been really pretty extraordinary, and they continue, and I know they will continue into the fall. So I want to tell you that is not something that we should ever assume. But it has been demonstrated, and it's really shown a kind of resilience and a commitment at Lehman College that we all should be really proud of. It's real, and we're seeing in all the different facets of what we do, we're seeing that evidenced. So thank you all. And with that, I want to wish you all a good afternoon and evening. And we will hope to see you again at the next briefing.